What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we got MrBallen again. Yeah. And this video is called "What They Find in the Barn is Nightmare Fuel." The Hinterkaifeck murders. I butchered that fucking name so bad. But yeah, if you guys do like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, go over to MrBallen, like his videos, and subscribe to his channel because he makes entertaining ass videos. So yeah, if you guys do, if you guys will, if you guys should, let's enjoy this video. Yeah, let's get into it.
No matter whether you believe this
probably didn't make any sense, you know. I'm trying here.
Or something normal and rational and explainable, no matter which way you feel, or maybe somewhere in the middle, the details of the story itself, the actual facts of the story, are horrifying. What actually happened to this poor family in the 1920s is just one of the more terrifying ordeals that I've ever come across, and it's crazy to me that it's a true story. Without giving too much away, someone or something shows up on this farm, and it doesn't leave. One of the maids starts hearing strange sounds. They start looking for this person or this thing. They start seeing things moving around in their house, and there's every indication that someone is in the farm. Someone has snuck into the farm and is terrorizing us. And then, on March 31st, 1922, whatever it was, finally attacks. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders. Before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the dark, strange, and mysterious delivered in story format, well then my channel is the one for you. That is literally all I do on this channel, and I upload 3 to 4 times every week. So if that is of interest to you, I would ask you to gently 360 no-scope the like button, subscribe, and turn on all post notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. Alright, let's
do that.
Back in the 1920s, there was a farmstead called Hinterkaifeck Farm that was located in southern Germany in a very rural, isolated, heavily forested area. So
and I'm actually, before we get into this, I'm actually thinking about making gaming videos again. Yeah, I used to make gaming videos. But I honestly don't know what to play. To be honest, I actually don't know what to play. I'll think of something, to be honest, because I used to make gaming videos before. I'll probably play like scary games, you know, because I don't scare that easily, but when I get scared. So yeah, I'm probably just I'm gonna do that because I don't want to sit around and watch videos, other people's videos, just because. I mean, I'll do it from time to time, but I don't want to do it, as a whatever people put it as. I'd rather make my own content. I already make my own music, but I want to make my own content. So yeah, I'm gonna do that, to be honest, because I'm getting kind of tired of. Not tired, but I'm getting annoyed with these reaction videos because I know that reactors have bad reps. So I'm trying to do things differently.
Occupants of the farm were the live-in maid and the Gruber family. The Gruber family was Andreas, his wife Azalea, their daughter Victoria, and Victoria's 2 children, Joseph and Azalea as well. And everything was going fine for the Gruber family and for their farm until the winter of 1921, when some very strange things started happening on their property. The first one to notice strange things happening around their property was their live-in maid. She spent the majority of her time in the main house, and she was alone a lot of the time. And she started to notice when she was alone that she would hear tapping, what sounded like in the walls. Not someone in another room tapping, but literally something in the walls. She would go up and she would listen, and it would still be tapping, but she couldn't make sense of it. And And then she started hearing a combination of disembodied voices and footsteps in the attic. And when she started hearing those footsteps and voices coming from the attic, she ran and told Andreas to say, hey, someone's in your attic. Andreas would go up, even though he was skeptical, he would go up to the attic and he would look, and not only is no one there, but it was this totally open space up there. There wasn't really anywhere to hide. There was no one up there, and there was no sign of anybody having been up there. There was no food, there was nothing. And so over the course of several weeks, the live-in maid kept saying that at night she'd be laying in bed and she'd hear footsteps and voices from the attic. She'd hear tapping at the walls. She would tell Andreas, and then Andreas, frustrated with her, because he didn't really believe her, charging up into the attic, and nothing would be there. And so she was just not having it. She'd been working with this family for a long time. She did not feel convinced that no one was there. She really thought this place was haunted. And so she ultimately tells the Gruber family, like, I'm sorry, but I can't stay here another night. Whenever I'm here, I feel like I'm being watched. And at night, I can't sleep because of the footsteps in the attic and these voices. I know you've checked, but I can't be here anymore. And so she quits. And it really catches the Gruber family by surprise because they rely on her help. And so they're kind of thrown for a loop because they have to replace her. And so she leaves, and now they need to go find a replacement. Over the following 6 months, they would not find a replacement, and it would create an increased workload for basically everybody on the farm, which led to a higher stress level. Everybody's kind of on edge. You know, the departure of the live-in maid was a really big deal. So you got to put that in perspective as you hear what happens over the next 6 months. At first, after the live-in maid had left, no one reported hearing any strange sounds around the house. You know, they were so busy that they didn't even have time to consider if there was any sounds in the house that they didn't recognize. But eventually, Andreas would later admit that he started hearing the tapping sounds and the footsteps in the attic and the disembodied voices, and no one's there. And so now he's becoming paranoid, and he shared his paranoia with the rest of the family, who's now also hearing these sounds and these disembodied voices and the footsteps, and despite checking and now searching the whole property. And they've begun to actually do a full-blown investigation. Everyone's just stressed. They don't know what it's coming from. They're mad at each other for becoming paranoid. And so they just continue on with work and try to put it out of their mind that they're hearing these strange sounds.
You know what the craziest thing is like with MrBallen, you don't even gotta watch the video, you just listen to it. That's why, does he have a podcast? I don't know.
But the activity in the house would only intensify. What was initially just strange tapping sounds and what they thought were disembodied voices turned into things going missing around the house. Most notably, a set of their house keys went missing. And there's only so many people there. There's really not a good answer as to why they might go missing. And they only have a couple sets. It's a big deal to lose a set of keys, and they went missing and they couldn't find them. Once the keys went missing, the family couldn't stop thinking about the strange sounds in their house and wondering if there really was someone hiding in their house. It was terrifying. And then when young Azalea, one of the grandchildren, suddenly went missing one night, the whole family is in full panic. They go out looking everywhere for her. They're yelling in the forest. They can't find her. And then finally they find her, and she has no idea how she got out, where she went, and what even happened. She just was like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know how I got out. She was exhausted. She was confused. They brought her back to the house, and they're trying to get her to explain why you were doing that. She can't. They go back inside, and sitting on the table is a newspaper that Andreas didn't subscribe to. No one in the family had brought. No one even in the area, it would turn out, subscribed to this particular kind of obscure newspaper. It's just sitting in their house. A couple days after that, they noticed that someone had clearly tried to break into their tool shed, which had loads of tools in there, very expensive. There was a lock on the outside. There was very deep gashes into the metal. It looked like someone had been, hacking away at the lock to try to break it open. But they're living in a very isolated part of Germany where there isn't much ambient sound, and so it was strange to them that someone had been so violent with this lock, hacking at this metal lock, presumably with something metal, and no one had put it.
The thing is, bruh, they have all these signs to leave, and they don't leave.
Or reacted to it. None of the dogs were nothing. So just very confusing stuff is starting to happen around the property. But it would be what Andreas sees in the spring of 1922 that pushes he and his family over the edge from general paranoia to outright panic. So Andreas wakes up in early March of 1922. There was this huge snowstorm the night before. door. He gets up early and he goes to the back door of his house and he opens it up and he can clearly see that there are footprints that have walked from the forest, which is pretty far away from his property. They have quite a bit of acreage. There's footsteps that are clearly coming out of the forest all the way up to the door that he has now just opened. He's looking down at these footprints and there's no return set of tracks. And so he's thinking to himself, well, whoever walked up to my house came into the house. So he shuts the door and locks it and immediately goes and wakes up his family and says, hey, why are there footprints leading up to the back door? Because there's no footprints going away. Someone came to the back door and apparently came inside. His wife, his daughter, the grandkids, no one has a clue. The maid, nobody knows. They say, hey, I'm going to sleep. You have no idea. So now Andreas, he's obviously thinking about the strangeness that's happened in his house for the past couple of months, and so he's worried. So he opens the door back up and he looks and he's studying these footprints and he's like, I just don't get it. You have to turn around and walk back, otherwise you're here, you're at the house. He shuts the door and he walks around his house. He looks at all of the different exits to his house. So he looks to see if there's exiting footprints, which is scaring him thinking about it, which means someone would have come into the house and jumped out a window or gone out another door, but he's checking. As soon as he makes sure there's no other footprints, he does a scan of his entire house. Because now he's convinced that someone's in his house. He goes to the attic. He goes all around. He's yelling. He's looking everywhere. There's nothing. There's no one in the house. The family's concerned, but there's no one in the house.
Why aren't you leaving? That's my biggest question.
Locked, and he goes
Why aren't y'all leaving?
Tracking these footprints back to where they came from. He walks all the way to the forest, and they just kind of stop abruptly. Like they just started kind of magically at the edge of the tree line and walked right up to his house, but there's no clear origination besides it's just in the forest somewhere, and there's also no clear sense of what happened once they arrived at the door. So after doing one more loop around his property, he goes in the barn, he goes in the shed, he goes back in his house, he's checking the attic, he's looking everywhere, and he can't find any indication that some stranger is here. He finally decides that he's going to tell someone about what's been happening in his property. And so they did have a neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, who was his closest neighbor, who was not really that close, but a couple hundred yards away. And he goes over and he tells Lorenz everything. I've been hearing sounds, my maid quit because she was hearing sounds, looked in the attic, couldn't find anything, and he started hearing sounds, the keys go missing, there's this newspaper in my house, my granddaughter's running out in the middle of the night, she's disappearing, she doesn't know what's going on, these footprints, I can't make sense of it. And so Lorenz, also not knowing what to make of it, suggests like, hey, I have extra weapons, you want to take an extra rifle and arm yourself, protect yourself? And Andreas just says, you know what, no, I'm good, pass on the rifle, I'm probably overreacting anyways, and I'm sure we're just fine. But it turned out he was not just fine, and he probably should have taken up Lorenz on the arm. So just a couple of days after speaking to
If someone,
about the weird
if you go up to somebody, you tell them your situation, and they're like, oh, that doesn't seem right. Here, take a gun. And you don't take a gun? You don't take that gun? Bro.
property, the Gruber family got
The inevitable will happen.
Which was they finally were able to locate another maid, a live-in maid, to come stay with them to replace the one who had left because she believed the place was haunted.
I think that was the dumbest decision that anyone could make. Why wouldn't you take the fucking gun, dude? This dude offered it to you, and you don't take it. Now you're dead.
Later, on March 31st, 1922, this new maid shows up to Hinterkaifeck, but unfortunately, this would also be the same date a horrible tragedy unfolds at the Hinterkaifeck farm. Over the course of 24 hours, someone or something was in the barn on Hinterkaifeck and was able to silently lure in members of the Gruber family one by one. Without telling anybody else what they were doing, they would walk over almost like in a trance into the barn where they would be struck in the head by something called a pneumatic, which is kind of like pneumatics. Blow to the head and they're down. As soon as they're down, whatever was in there would take their bodies and move them to the corner and lay them down, square them up against the corner of the barn, and then cover them with hay. And as soon as they were deceased, whatever it was would go back and lure in the next person. So over a whole day, each of these members of the family are being lured into this barn and burned. Investigators nobody knows what it was that was luring them in. They weren't scared when they went in. Their guard was down, and they go in and then get hit in the head with this mat until there was 4 people stacked up in the corner. And at that point, the remaining 2 people on the farm were still in the house sleeping, and whoever was doing this went into the house and used the mat to get the lights. 4 days later, on April 4th, a repairman who was scheduled to come to the Hinterkaifeck farm shows up to repair the feeding machine. He goes to the door, he knocks on the door, and it's locked. And you can see lights on inside, you can hear the dog barking inside, but no one comes to greet him. Now, the feeder was outside of the main house. It was actually on basically a public area of the farm, so we didn't need them to physically get to the feeder. He knew how to fix it, so after trying the front door, going to the back door, looking in the windows and seeing lights, hearing the dog, but everything's locked, he just said, you know what, I'm just gonna do the job. So he goes into the area where the feeder is, he does the repair, and as he's leaving, he notices that the dog that was barking, that was inside the house, is now outside the house tied up. And so he goes over to that section of the house thinking, oh, well, now I'll knock on the door. Someone's sure to see me. And again, no one comes to the door. And the back door, that clearly must have just been opened to let the dog out, is locked. And so he's like, man, that's odd. So instead of just leaving, he finishes the job at the feeder, and he goes over to Lorenz Schlittenbauer's house, the neighbor. And he says, hey, just so you know, I was just over at the Gruber family's farm. I fixed their feeder. They wanted me to, but no one was there, but maybe somebody was there because the dog was inside, he was outside. Don't know what's going on, but can you just let them know that I was here because I couldn't get in touch with them. But it prompts Schlittenbauer to go check on the Grubers because, they haven't seen him in a couple days.
Bring a whole police force with you.
By and just make sure everything's okay. So they go over to Hinterkaifeck, and the lights are on in the house, the dog sure enough is outside, the doors are locked, and they see that the barn is actually open. So they go to the barn, and in the barn, at first they don't see anything, but in the back corner, you can see four bodies of the Gruber family. They go inside and they find the remaining 2 bodies, and no one else is there. Although there were signs of someone recently eating in the kitchen. The fire was lit, it was like the house was being lived in at that very moment. Although to Schlittenbauer and anybody that was there, they have no way of knowing that it's been days since the Gruber family had passed away. And so they end up leaving and getting in touch with authorities. So the police show up and they're able to determine with relative certainty that the tragedy took place on March 31st. But for 4 days afterwards, someone lived in the Gruber house, slept in their beds, ate their food, lit fires, lounged around inside, they played with the dog, they milked the cows. I mean, they lived in this house. They ran the farm for 4 days. And other neighbors would even say that, we saw smoke come out of the chimney on April 3rd and April 2nd. And so it was confirmed that someone had been staying in this house, which is so creepy. And so the police are a little bit baffled, and they're like, okay, well then it's probably a drifter. Target of opportunity, they probably saw this isolated farm, and they probably were going to rob them, stay there a little bit. But when they searched the farmhouse, there were large sums of cash that were just out practically in the open, barely hidden, that had not been taken. And anybody that was robbing the place would have taken the cash. And so it wasn't a robbery.
Wait, what?
Passion, but they were like, what's the motive? And unfortunately, Andreas was not particularly well liked in the town that was nearby. And so there was lots of people that didn't like Andreas, which made it really hard to whittle it down. So they started just interviewing like crazy. They're talking to hundreds of people that were in connection with that could be connected to this, but they're getting nowhere. They did feel like Lorenz Schlittenbauer was probably the best suspect because he's right there, he's right next door, he's their neighbor, and in fact he had wanted to marry Victoria, the daughter, and Andreas had told him outright no. They thought that could be a reason, but the big issue with Lorenz Schlittenbauer being the primary suspect is he had a farm to keep and a family to take care of, and so how could he have committed this crime and then ran the Hinterkaifeck farm for 4 days and lived there and slept there without his family knowing? His family said, no, he's been here with us. And so the police, they aren't able to solve it. They don't really have any decent suspects.
That is...
They kind of leave it with, well, whoever did this...
That is crazy, bro.
Probably probably had been there for about 6 months, potentially, before they committed the crime, and then stayed there for a few days afterwards, and then vanished. And to this day, they have not been caught. They even reopened this case in 2007, but they found that, despite the number of suspects and despite the evidence available, it just wasn't enough to provide any sort of
The
clarity.
fingerprints on the fucking weapon that the person used. Is there any fingerprints? Were they smart enough to wipe that off?
So it remains
Wash it off.
a huge mystery. So, like any other high-profile unsolved mystery, there are literally hundreds of potential explanations for what could have happened. But what I'm most interested in is what you all think could have happened. I will do my best to look through your comments, and I'll respond to the ones that are the most interesting.
A murderer.
Or the most plausible. So please,
A crazy
in the comment section,
dude.
let me know what you
Broke.
think happened to Hinterkaifeck.
A crazy dude watched them for almost a year, and then chose that day to kill him.
And if you haven't already, please gently
That's my guess.
no scope the.
But yeah, if you guys do like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, go over to MrBallen, subscribe to his channel, like his videos. But before I do end the video, my thought is, not my opinion or whatever, what I think happened was somebody watched them for, like he said, 6 months, studied their moves, studied them fully, and then struck on that day because they knew what their daily routine was, I guess. That's my guess. A very, very dedicated murderer. So yeah, like I said, if you guys do like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, go over to MrBallen's channel, and yeah, like and subscribe to him, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.